All right, Kevin here, and I'm back with you for another episode. And I'll tell you, I am really excited for this conversation today. Today, I am here with my friend Sherry Boyer. Sherry, great to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here talking with you, Kevin.
Yeah, same. And I know you and I, we met through Kevin Nation's Family Mastermind is how you and I met. We were both in that group for a period of time. And I'm trying to think, that was back in like 14, 15?
15, yeah,
Yeah,
15,
yeah.
2014,
Time
15, 16,
flies.
yeah.
Time flies. And
It really does.
and you and I stayed in touch. And and then when Jules and I ended up starting well, actually it was even before that. You had signed up to come to an event that we were doing in March of 2020. And
Yes.
then COVID hit. And that event did not take place. And right about that same time, we had launched the Tribe for Leaders community, and you had heard about that, and you were like, Kev, I think I just want to be a part of that. And so you were one of our founding members of the Tribe for Leaders community as well. And so and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today. And what I'd like to do is just kind of start a little bit with by just letting people know your background. What do you do? Who do you serve? What motivates you to do what you do? And just kind of let everybody know, like, who is Sherry Boyer? And we'll just kind of start there. And I'll just turn it over to you to start there.
Oh boy, I'm like, to talk about myself. So yeah, Sherry Boyer. As you said that, I'm like, oh, who am I right now? Because I've had several different iterations of Sherry Boyer through the years. But right now, the main group of business owners that I serve are people who own dog-related businesses. So could be a veterinarian, dog walker with a larger business, solo dog trainers with team, pet care facility owners. And I started off because I owned a pet care facility in California. And I was very vocal. I'm a pretty vocal human as it is anyway. I love your opinions and I love mine, and they can all be different. So that's what I believe. And I was pretty vocal in that about how I believed teams should be treated and how we can work win-win for ourselves as a business owner, for our clients, win-win-win, for our team members, for everything. And people started following me, and I created a consulting business without even meaning to. And I've been word of mouth since then. I tried to do Facebook ads once, but it's a really hard niche to target. I've literally been referral only, and I have a very nice consulting business. I run group programs. I do private consulting with business owners, and the impact I always see, like I used to teach English, lived in Japan in the 90s, and I taught English, and I always loved the impact, like when I see a human, and then it turned into dogs later, but also a human make progress in something, like they're doing this thing and they're trying to do this thing and they're getting to this next place and they make progress to even a part of it, that just lights me up. And then what I loved that with teaching English, and I loved seeing then the impact that could have on a human, like let's say they wanted to travel or they had a business deal they were working on and they needed to work on their language skills, and then they made the business deal, or they were able to travel and communicate with somebody in a different language, and that level of confidence it brought to them. And so that's still, I see my impact as not the impact I have on the business owner, but the impact the business owner has on their team and their clients, and then the ripple effect that has in people's lives. So that's why I am doing this, because I love to see humans progress to their next best iteration of themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you are an absolute expert when it comes to setting up systems in business.
I just had a call with a guy in Texas who's nothing to do in the dog world. He runs had all these new terms I don't know. And it really brought home to me, like, how it doesn't matter what business you have, we all have the same issues in our businesses. Often he runs it would be considered a smaller business. He's 7-figure, but in the terms of how they determine a business size, but he does, it's like a Granger. So they sell janitorial products, fasteners, screws, whatever for, but is a smaller private business in Texas, and he services a lot of factories. But his problems that he has are the exact same things that he can go into a business and tell them how to get their SOPs and optimize everything. But in his own business, he can't see it.
Sure.
And do it. And so he's looking for help with that. But that's what I do. Like, I can see where the inefficiencies are and can see how to make it all work better with standards, which for most entrepreneurs, it's the whole word sounds like it's like watching paint dry. They're like, I need to be creative in my passion. And then their team members are like, if you keep being creative, we're going to do something to you. Stop it. We need to know clearly what we're supposed to do and how to do it. And then we can do it. And that piece is missing in a lot of businesses. So yeah, I literally, before we got on this call, I was like, yeah, this guy runs a big business completely different. I did not understand the acronyms of what he was talking about with his software and all of the different industry things, but the issues at the bottom are all the same. Yeah. He has somebody in the wrong role. He loves this guy. He doesn't want to move him down or demote him or move him on. And I'm like, well, we gotta put someone in who's the correct person in that role and move this person into a role that's better for them without demoting them. But I mean, that's also what I do. Like, where are we with the personalities? Are we hiring the right people? Or are we hiring people who are too much like us? Yeah. I do a lot of and pricing, talk about pricing all the time. That's another thing. In my industry in particular, the dog world, people came into it with a passion. They love the dogs. They want to help. They're very, very big hearts. And they feel that pricing, if they price things too high, then they won't be able to help enough people. But then 10 years later, after working their heinies into the ground, trying to help everybody, they realize they have to start pricing properly. So I try to get them when they're at the beginning of that, price properly so that you can help many people, not all people, but then once you have a little extra bandwidth, then you can create pro bono programs and other things within the community where you can help more people in ways that impact a lot of them. But the pricing has to be in place first in order for the owner to then have the time to be able to create more impact.
You bet. Yeah. They've got to be able to take care of their own house financially in order to be able to do the other kind of stuff,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very good. Well, what I'd like to do now is kind of shift gears a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reiterate the question that I ask everybody in this interview series. And so have you been introduced to a person that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not even be possible if not for this person? And I am just really excited to hear your story, your experience around this, Sherry.
I do. I have many people, but when you asked that question, I can't remember where you asked it, if it was on a Facebook post or in one of the calls on the, I think it doesn't matter where you asked it. I was like, oh my gosh, what an amazing question. And then this person's face came up. And I'm like, that person that I'm going to talk about impacted my life in so many ways. I don't know if she even knows it. I've told her, but an amazing human being. Her name is Janice Niederhofer.
Okay.
And she is a 29-year career DEA agent, law enforcement officer. She is now, she does all sorts of things, but she is she's an interview interrogator trainer. So this is going to sound weird, but so she teaches law enforcement all over the world how to interview and interrogate people that they have in custody kindly, without manipulating, without any meanness, how to create rapport with them very quickly and get the confession. Wow. But I didn't know about this when I met her. So when I met her, I was at a friend's house. My friend is Adrienne Ashley. Some people may know her name. I was at her house in Mill Valley, and she was having a gathering of some business people. And this woman was there, and we were talking a little bit, and I started to get teary-eyed. because I was in a place in my life where things were a little bit difficult. And she looked at me and she's like, you got something going on. And I said, I do. How do you know? She's like, oh, your eyes told me. I read micro expressions in faces. You got something going on. Do you have about 20 minutes? We can do a process. And I'm like, a process? Yeah, I'm sitting here. I have 20 minutes. Sure. What are we going to do? So she took me through a process, and it took less than 20 minutes. It took maybe 5 minutes.
Wow.
And this thing that I had been, and I'll tell a very short story about that in a second. This thing that I had been stuck on, it was it was on a loop in my head, and she could see it in my eyes. It kept, a sound would remind me, and I would loop back on this thing that had happened. After that moment with her, it never happened again.
Wow. Wow.
And I'm like, what did you just do? And she's like, oh, we should go have coffee sometime or something. I'll tell you what I did, but I'm not going to tell you right now. We're at this big thing, blah, 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 blah. Like, she totally left like a wide open loop.
Yeah. She left the open loop for you. Now you got to, I got to go have coffee with this guy.
To go figure out what that was. But so the situation that happened, that's trigger warning. So for anybody who has potentially gun trauma, my first husband committed suicide with me in the house. And this was April, so 6 months after this had happened, I met her.
Okay.
And I didn't see the event, thank God, but I was there when it happened. And so what I had been looping on was the sounds. So from right before it happened to after the sheriff arrived. So it was quite a loop because I lived rurally and they couldn't find my house. So I heard things, I was on the phone with 911 with the dispatchers, and then I was directing them to my house.
Wow. Wow.
Somehow, I don't know how. And I was like out waving a flashlight so they could see where I was, because it was very rural, no lights, dark of night. And so this was like a half-hour loop that would play in my head when I heard a sound.
Wow.
And so I owned a dog business at the time. I had a big dog facility that I couldn't even go into. So this completely hampered my life because I would go in, I would hear a certain bark and it would trigger the loop and I would have to leave. So that stopped happening after this 5-minute experience with Janice. So
I got a quick question, Sherry.
Yeah.
Did you know this was happening? Did you realize at the time that you would hear a certain sound and it would trigger this loop and you would just start reliving this whole thing?
I sort of realized it.
Okay. Okay.
Because I knew enough to get myself out of the situation.
Uh-huh.
But I didn't know exactly what was going on. But it felt at the time before I met her, it felt like you press play, like we used to have recorders, right? Like press play, like literally felt like press play on the tape recorder. And I'm old enough to remember tape recorders. Press play, it played, and then you press rewind or press stop or whatever, press rewind, it goes back, and then it plays again.
Yeah.
It was literally a loop that the only way to stop it was to physically move out. And so this also, at the time this happened, I couldn't be in my business, and I was I was key employee in my own business, right? I was running things. And so that's one of the things that led me to knowing I had to create systems and procedures and everything to standards, because I could not be in my business to run it. Thank God I had good enough staff that kept it going, but it wasn't going to the standards that I wanted it. So that's a whole nother story. But that whole event triggered big changes in my life. And so I met her and she said, I can't remember the details. The things are really fuzzy, but she was like, so this is the deal. What I do, I learned originally by going, she was a trainer with Tony Robbins. So she was a DEA agent. And on her weekends, she was going and volunteering with Tony Robbins' organization and being a trainer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she's like, that's where I was introduced to change work. And she said so she was with that organization for several years. That most of those people are just volunteers.
Yep.
And then she studied formally NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which has various opinions about it.
Yep.
Whatever. And she got certified for whatever reason. And then she took everything she'd learned and started using it in her interrogations with suspects because she
Wow.
was taking down big bad people, right? Like big stuff. I don't know all the stories, but I can imagine she's badass. So, and then they were like, how'd you do that? You didn't yell at them. You didn't threaten them. We just sat there. And she's like, yeah, they're my best friend within a minute.
Wow.
And then that's where she started her like a consult. I guess she at some point she she retired and then started this consulting business,
Okay.
where she teaches people how to do that. So she was like, do you want to, I'm planning this project and I want to have people around me who are really good at this. But in order to join me in the project, I need you to be trained in NLP. I'm like, okay. And I'm of the, what is it? I forget things. Human dynamics. I'm the one that has to be invited into things. If you invite me into something, I'll rarely say no, which has gotten me into trouble many, many times in my life. But she's like, if you want to, I'm like, oh, sure, I'll do that. Plus I have ADD and I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm like, yeah, that sounds interesting. I'll do that. So I signed up with my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband. So this was a year after I met her, signed up to do an NLP course at NLP California with Tim and Chris Hallbaum, who are amazing trainers. She said, it's the only place I'm going to tell you to go. It's all whatever, go here, go there, whatever. But if you want to work with me, you're going to go there. I'm like, okay, fine. And it was in our area anyway. Went and got NLP practitioner certified and then master practitioner certified with my husband, which was a boyfriend at the time, which was really good because had we not gone through it together, we probably would not be together today. And what I learned during that time about myself and about humans and about how the mind works and processes information and how we can affect great change in people very, very quickly without even hearing their story, without them having to relive and retell their trauma, has changed everything I do.
Wow. Wow.
Absolutely everything. Had I not, like, it was I consider that a gift from God, meeting her.
So,
We're not the thing is, we're not in touch that much all the time, but we ended up going to another training at NLP. We're at the same, she was resourcing, they call it resourcing. She was a volunteer for that training. She was a resource person and she was there. I didn't even know she was going to be there. So it was so good to see her. I told her then I'm going to get teary-eyed. Yeah. How much, that chance, and put chance in quotes, because I don't necessarily always believe that it's chance. God put her there. And now I've been able to help. So I do this work. They don't even know I'm doing it with all of my clients. Some, if I take them through a process, it's always with permission, of course. I'm crying right now, but I've been able to help so many people out of traumas because traumas, so we see it in dogs. So it's the same with humans. A dog will be a happy-go-lucky dog, happy. And then one event happens. It could be they happen to be in the neighborhood when fireworks went off right there and some kind of trauma happened. Or maybe they were at the dog park and got into a fight and a trauma happened. We don't know what the trauma could be, but the one instance will affect, and it's not permanent because I've got proof that we can shift the dogs too without even doing any of this work. We can shift a dog, but the one bad instance affects everything going forward. And it's the same with humans. The one thing that happened affects everything going forward. And if we can rewind back without taking somebody back to their trauma, back to an instance or something, and then reframe it, we can rewire literally how their brain thinks about it and responds to it going forward in time, which sounds really crazy as I say it, but it's actually works.
You know what? It doesn't sound so crazy to me at all. And Sherry, I've known you for a long time, and I didn't know you. You know what? I think you've kind of alluded to that you do this stuff, but like this is the first time I've heard you articulate it, and it's. It's very interesting because when you mentioned that the dog can have trauma, I remember we had got this poodle years ago. And the day that my wife went to pick this poodle up and bring it home, it was our high school was winning their basketball season. They were in the playoffs and stuff. And our daughter, Caitlin, her boyfriend at the time, it's now her husband today, but he played basketball. And so, you know, we went to all the games anyways, but of course, you know, when they're in the playoffs, we're especially going to the games. And on this particular night, it was a massive turnout at our local high school for this playoff game. And we came out from that game and found out that my wife's car had got broken into, and it wasn't just her car. There was several cars there that got broken into, but they had used this mechanism to just punch the window out. Well, that dog, I didn't even know had I known what you just said, we could have probably got help for that dog. But that dog, for the rest of the time we had him until he passed away, would just bark all the time, and just, you know, even at me. I'm like, man, this is my house too. You know me, but every time I'd come in the house, the dog would bark.
Yep.
And just, you know, and so I would imagine that a lot of that was to do with that trauma of him being in the car that night when the car window got busted out.
Completely depends on the individual, the organism, the system that where the trauma happens and how they interpret it. And maybe he couldn't get out, so he couldn't escape.
Yeah, he couldn't. So he was in a dog carrier sitting on the seat.
Yeah, so the sound, the suddenness, the whatever it was, then really kicked in his defense drive. And so he was like, anything scary, boom, you got to go away. That definitely could have been worked with. It's so sad that it happened. So if you know anybody out there who needs help with that, I have the referrals to everybody. I no longer do any dog training, but I know a lot of dang good ones. But that same thing. So like what you experienced with your dog, or what your dog experienced, and you saw how he then processed information going forward, that happens with humans.
Yeah.
The dogs can't tell us, and we can work them through that. We can recondition them. We can desensitize them. There's all these words, but we can work with that. And it takes time. With humans, it's actually faster.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And I don't really promote it, because I don't necessarily want I feel like I'm multifaceted in what I do. And I don't want that to be my one thing, but it is definitely something I do. And I don't like, people don't really know I'm doing it either, because I've become fluent in it.
Well,
but if I'm doing a process, I always ask permission. I never go do something without someone's permission, but I will look at what's happening with their micro expressions and their eyes and their language, what words they use, and create rapport very quickly with them.
Yeah. Well,
in order to help them get to where they want to go, right? That's the whole point. The whole point is to help them get to where they want to go, not about me.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, Janice has really had an impact on you. And look at how many other people's lives have been impacted because of that. How many lives have you impacted, and how many lives have they impact?
Yes,
exactly. And when we really start looking at this, and we're talking about one relationship here, one single relationship. Yeah. And my goal with this podcast has always been to let people like yourself share your story, your experience around this, to honor this person, and in this case it's Janice, and but also on the other side, anybody listening to this, my goal is just to inspire and motivate them to place an intentional effort on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in our lives. And
you never know. You never know what one thing you do, just off the cuff, being yourself, smiling, eye contact with somebody. You never know what moment is going to shift someone's life forever. I was in high school in Nashville, Tennessee, and I don't remember all of the details, but I do remember that one of my not really a friend, somebody I knew was telling a story in a class. And this is a high school girl who was in line at a McDonald's. There were lines at McDonald's once upon a time before we had drive-throughs, I guess. There was a McDonald's near the high school, and people would cut out and go there. They weren't supposed to, but they would go there. She was in line at a McDonald's, and she was, I think this might have been even pre-Walkman day. She was just kind of bebopping around, dancing, chatting with her friends, smiling. And there was a woman right behind them, and they all smiled at the woman and caught her eye, and then she started dancing. They went through the line and got their food, and were chit-chatting at the table. And the lady came up to her and said, may I speak to you for a moment? She's like, yeah. She said, this is going to sound really crazy, but this was going to be my last meal.
Wow.
And the girl was like, what? And she said, this was going to be my last meal. I had a whole plan. And that plan disappeared when you smiled at me and met my eyes. And then I started dancing with you. I just want you to know my plan's gone.
Wow. Wow.
I think I was 16 when I heard that story. It makes me cry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never forgotten it. And I've never forgotten that. Like the power of literally a smile.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
eye contact with another human being.
Yep.
They have opinions about what's happened over the past couple of years around that. As they tried to take it away from people. And I think it's one of the cruelest things that can be done to humans.
Yeah.
But even in the midst of that, it's so like it's seed planting, smiling, eye contact, lifting someone's spirit. It just, you don't have to go in with the intention of lifting another spirit. By you having your spirit lifted and you being that in yourself as a human being that's delivering happiness just because you're being you, can change a life.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, Sherry, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview, to have this conversation today. And for anybody listening to this, just like, I'm sure that people going, man, you know what? Wow, Kevin, I really like Sherry. I love the way Sherry shows up. How can people follow up with you if they wanted to?
I'm terrible. I Facebook, but I'm pretty opinionated, so be aware, but my opinions aren't yours, and that's completely cool. Facebook is great. I'm Sherry Boyer World on Instagram, where I'm not opinionated. And also I'm putting a website up. So maybe by the time people hear this, I will have it. It's sherryboyer.com. Doesn't exist right now, but it's coming.
Nice.
my whole world literally is just people reaching out to me on Facebook Messenger, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's it's what's crazy. That's where I'm most active too, and not LinkedIn, and what's funny is I just interviewed. Who was I interviewing recently? They told me the same thing. Yeah, I'm on Facebook a lot, but I'm not on LinkedIn. I'm like, that's totally me.
Right. I'm on LinkedIn. Never. I'm on LinkedIn, but I'm never there.
Yeah. Same. So, well, Sherry, any last words before we
wonderful. I love what you're doing. I think it's wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity and for spreading this message.
And I really appreciate you, Sherry. Thanks again.
Same here, Kevin. Take care.